They told us deodorant was harmless, a daily spray of freshness, a simple way to feel clean. But what if every puff you've used for years carried something far worse than sweat? Recent lab reports have uncovered that several popular men's body sprays, the same ones stacked on shelves at Walmart, CVS, and Target, were laced with chemicals that can quietly sabotage your hormones and even destroy fertility over time. We're talking about benzene, a compound so toxic it's classified as a human carcinogen and endocrine disruptor, and yet it's been found in products trusted by millions of men across America. If our deodorants can't be trusted, what else inside our homes is slowly rewriting our DNA? How many fathers, sons, and husbands have been unknowingly paying the price for corporate shortcuts masked as 24-hour protection? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And tonight we're going to strip away the branding, the lies, and the fine print to expose which men's deodorant sprays have been recalled or accused of containing infertility-causing chemicals. And more importantly, which ones you can still use safely without risking your future. Number 1. Axe. It's funny how the can that once promised confidence now feels more like a confession. Axe, the so-called wingman in a bottle, turned out to be a ticking aerosol time bomb dressed up in teenage swagger. The very product that sold millions of men, the illusion of attraction, is now under the microscope for something far darker. Benzene contamination and potential infertility risks that smell a lot like corporate betrayal. Independent chemical watchdogs like Valisure didn't need to dig too deep. The evidence practically sprayed itself into the air. They found traces of benzene, an industrial chemical so toxic it's banned in most household products, hiding inside certain Axe body sprays. Not a whiff, but measurable levels hovering around 2 parts per million, enough to raise red flags across toxicology labs. Benzene isn't just a cancer suspect, it's a hormone wrecking ball, interfering with the very system that decides whether your body's still capable of creating life. Imagine spraying on Phoenix or Apollo every morning, not knowing that your fresh start might be mutating your DNA like some twisted science fiction subplot, except this one's playing out in your bathroom. When the findings surfaced, Unilever, the parent company behind Axe, didn't shout, didn't panic, they tiptoed. Their statement was the kind of corporate poetry that tries to sound responsible without admitting guilt. A voluntary recall of select lots. In plain English, that means, we got caught, but let's not scare the shareholders. What they didn't mention was that the contamination came from the propellants, cheap butane and propane, the invisible gases that shoot the scent into the air. Turns out these weren't just flammable. They were downright dirty, contaminated somewhere along the industrial pipeline by suppliers who apparently thought quality control was a suggestion, not a requirement. Inside sources later revealed that after the pandemic, Unilever quietly skipped multiple purification steps to cut costs. Every missed step was a few more cents saved per can, and every cent saved was another invisible price tag slapped on your health. The company kept pushing ads that told men to spray more, while never mentioning that each extra spray might just be another hit of benzene, phthalates, and parabens, chemicals known to lower testosterone faster than a heartbreak in February. Even more ironic, Axe once faced lawsuits for false advertising, like that anti-marks protection claim promising no stains on your clothes. Customers found out that was as truthful as a politician's diet plan. Regulatory agencies also accused the brand of deceptive packaging, using oversized containers with hollow bottoms. It's symbolic, really. All air, no substance, just like their moral compass. When benzene testing later grouped Axe with other infamous recalls, Old Spice, Secret, Dove, the pattern became impossible to ignore. It wasn't a one-off incident. It was a systemic rot hiding under a fog of fragrance. The propellant suppliers, possibly shared across brands, seemed to be the common thread, a tangled pipeline of negligence that connected multiple multi-billion-dollar names. What hits hardest is the realization that Axe didn't just sell deodorant. It sold masculinity as a chemical illusion. For a generation of working-class men, especially those who grew up with TV ads promising that one spray would make them irresistible, it feels like a cruel joke. These weren't reckless kids chasing trends. They were customers trusting a household brand. Now those same men are reading about benzene and infertility, wondering if that cheap can of confidence may have quietly stolen their future. It's the kind of betrayal that stings deeper than any bad date. The government's silence only makes it worse, because when regulators move at a snail's pace, corporations keep sprinting ahead, spraying the next batch before the first scandal even settles. But maybe this mess is the wake-up call we all needed. If you're tired of gambling with your hormones, ditch the industrial gas masquerading as deodorant and switch to brands that actually respect your biology. Try Native, Ursa Major, Everyman, Jack, Huron, or Tom's of Maine. Companies that don't treat non-toxic like a marketing slogan. They use essential oils, mineral powders, and natural extracts instead of benzene cousins. Because smelling good shouldn't require rolling the dice with your fertility. And if Axe taught us anything, it's that manhood doesn't come in a can, especially not one filled with lies. Number 2. Old Spice. Some stories don't need a twist. They just need the truth to be finally uncapped. Old Spice, the cologne-scented relic of America's manhood, the bottle that sat on your dad's sink like a badge of pride, has found itself reeking of something other than swagger. What once smelled like nostalgia now smells suspiciously like negligence. The discovery that Old Spice aerosol sprays contained benzene, a chemical so carcinogenic that it's banned from everyday use, ripped the cap off one of the most trusted brands in American bathrooms. When independent lab Valisher tested over 100 aerosol batches from multiple brands, Old Spice wasn't just on the list. It was near the top, with benzene levels ranging from just above 2 parts per million to a staggering 17.7, an amount that made even the FDA wince. That's not a trace. That's a red flag wrapped in marketing gloss and sprayed straight onto your skin. When Procter & Gamble finally issued a voluntary recall, it sounded less like corporate responsibility and more like an apology mumbled under their breath. The company framed it as precautionary, even as government regulators quietly classified it as a Class 1 recall, the highest level of danger reserved for products that can cause serious or fatal harm. But what makes this story sting worse than the smell of cheap cologne is what was found behind the factory doors. Leaked documents from the Baltimore production line exposed malfunctioning aerosol valves sealed with tape, rusting storage tanks filled with butane, and contaminated propellants from suppliers whose quality checks would make a high school science project look professional. One former technician even admitted that safety tests were skipped to meet shipment deadlines. So the same can of Old Spice sold at Walmart promising to make you smell ready for anything might have been filled in a room that wasn't ready for inspection. The lawsuits came like clockwork. More than a dozen class action cases accused P&G of misleading advertising, false claims of zero residue and clean protection, and most damning of all, knowingly selling tainted goods. Plaintiffs cited internal emails where executives debated whether to wait for more test results before alerting the public. Translation: they wanted to check if they could still sell through the inventory first. That's not an oversight. That's a moral bankruptcy with a marketing budget. And while P&G later agreed to an $8 million settlement covering Old Spice, Secret, and a few other brands, no amount of coupons or refund vouchers can undo years of exposure. Benzene doesn't care about your loyalty points. It accumulates in your bloodstream, quietly rewriting your body's script cell by cell. And for men who thought the worst they'd face was a rash, here's the kicker. Reproductive toxicology studies link long-term benzene inhalation to decreased sperm count and lower testosterone. That means that smell like a man slogan might as well have been smell like a chemical experiment. Dermatologists have also flagged the brand's use of harsh preservatives like methylisothiazolinone, a compound banned from many European skin products but still showing up in US formulations. Combine that with chronic propellant exposure, and you're left with a fragrance that's less classic manly and more EPA certified hazard. It's almost poetic in its cruelty. The very scent passed from fathers to sons might now be what prevents those sons from ever becoming fathers themselves. Yet Old Spice continues to plaster TV screens with smiling sailors and volcanoes, as if laughter and lava could wash away liability. For millions of working-class Americans, men who've trusted these brands for decades, this betrayal cuts deep. It's not just about chemicals, it's about trust, about realizing that the same hands selling us safety were cutting corners behind closed doors. Because when the brand that defined generations of men turns out to be poisoning them, it's not nostalgia anymore. It's negligence in a bottle. If you still want to smell clean without gambling your health, steer away from the red can of regret. Try Bravo Sierra, Dr. Squatch, Public Goods, Hawthorne, or Oars, plus Alps. Companies that use mineral salts, essential oils, and plant-based ingredients instead of pressurized poison. They don't promise to make you irresistible, just safe, honest, and human. And maybe that's the kind of masculinity worth keeping. Number 3. Tag Sport. Tag Sport was supposed to be the everyman's shortcut to confidence. That cheap can you grabbed off the Dollar Tree shelf because Axe was too pricey, and smelling decent shouldn't break the paycheck. But under its neon plastic armor, Tag was hiding something foul enough to make even a refinery blush. This wasn't a sport spray. It was a chemical experiment disguised as self-care. Independent tests by Valisher found benzene, the same cancer-linked solvent found in crude oil, in several Tag Midnight and Tag Sport variants like Fearless and Dominate. Plaintiffs in multiple class action suits accused My Imports USA, the distributor, of knowingly selling aerosol sprays tainted with this toxin while leaving it off the label. In plain English, customers were told they were buying confidence in a can. What they actually bought was poison on a budget. The numbers weren't vague whispers either. Valisher's report measured benzene levels comparable to other recalled sprays, ranging from 2 to over 10 parts per million. The EPA calls benzene a confirmed human carcinogen and a hematologic wrecking ball, attacking bone marrow and reproductive cells. Yet no warning, no recall, no remorse. Instead, the brand that once marketed itself as Fearless vanished quietly from shelves, a disappearing act that felt more like running, from accountability than protecting customers. According to whistleblowers cited in legal filings, Tag's production lines operated with rusting tanks, leaky valves, and overpressurized canisters. One worker described the plant as a pressure cooker of fumes, where the smell of butane was so strong it made your teeth taste like metal. And those were the same tanks pumping out cans of Tag Sport sold across Walmart, Walgreens, and online in bulk multi-packs. It's one thing to cut corners, it's another to spray them directly into people's lungs. The real kicker? Tag targeted teenage boys and blue-collar men, the groups least likely to question what's inside their body spray. Flashy commercials promised to ignite confidence and unleash power, while behind the scenes, lab reports were warning about endocrine-disrupting chemicals like ethylbenzene and synthetic musks such as galaxolide. These compounds mimic estrogen, messing with testosterone levels and fertility over time. Toxicologists warned that chronic exposure can reduce sperm count and cause hormonal imbalance. A cruel irony for a product that marketed itself as the scent of strength. Imagine spraying on Fearless only to find out it's slowly rewriting your hormones to make you weaker. It's like buying an energy drink that secretly saps your energy, but with a brand that doesn't even pretend to care. And because Tag was a low-cost line under My Imports USA, it never faced the same level of scrutiny as high-end brands. When Axe or Old Spice stumbled, at least the recalls were public. Tag, on the other hand, simply ghosted. No press release, no accountability, just warehouses cleared overnight. EPA records later revealed the same manufacturer was fined for dumping defective aerosol cans into open landfills, leaking benzene-contaminated gases into groundwater. So not only were consumers inhaling toxins, the environment was too. This wasn't just a case of cheap product, cheap quality. It was a slow-motion environmental and health scandal hiding in plain sight, masked by dollar store affordability and teenage nostalgia. For working-class men already cornered by rising costs, the Tag debacle feels personal, a reminder that corporate greed doesn't discriminate by income, it preys on it. Because when your customers can't afford a lawyer, your negligence becomes a business model. Tag didn't just sell deodorant, it sold false safety to people who trusted it most. And while the lawsuits keep crawling through federal courts, the brand remains a ghost, remembered only by the metallic sting it left behind. If you want to reclaim your health and your air, ditch the toxic cans and switch to cleaner brands that don't treat transparency like a luxury. Try Alpine Provisions, Hey Humans, Each and Every, or Schmidt's Naturals. Brands that replace propellants with plant-based formulas and essential oils instead of refinery waste. They may not scream Fearless on the label, but they won't sabotage your hormones either, because smelling good shouldn't mean gambling with your DNA, and no man should have to trade fertility for fragrance. Number 4. Suave Men's. Suave built its name on being the trustworthy, cheap option, the kind of brand you grabbed without a second thought because, well, it was everywhere. From Walmart shelves to bathroom cabinets in small-town America. It was the deodorant your dad used because it was just as good as the fancy stuff, only cheaper. But that famous blue can of Suave 24-hour protection aerosol turned out to be a wolf in dollar store clothing. A can full of benzene masquerading as freshness. The same product that promised confidence that lasts all day ended up pumping a known carcinogen and hormone disruptor straight into men's bodies. When Unilever finally issued its national recall in March 2022, after internal tests confirmed benzene contamination levels surpassing 2 parts per million, the truth was already too late for millions of loyal customers. For years, men across the country had been misting themselves in what they thought was deodorant, but in reality, it was a silent chemical drip, working its way into their bloodstreams like a toxic insurance policy with no expiration date. The company tried to spin it as a minor supplier problem, claiming the contamination came from propellants, not the formula itself. But insider reports and leaked factory audits told a much uglier story. Filters bypassed to save production time, suppliers in Texas repeatedly failing purity tests, and a cost-saving policy that quietly accepted small levels of contamination as commercially tolerable. Workers described refilling old chemical tanks that smelled like gasoline and using solvents that hadn't been replaced in years. This wasn't a one-time accident. It was systematic decay, the kind that happens when a company decides the working class can absorb a little poison if it keeps profits clean. In other words, Suave was affordable because it was cutting corners, not just on cost, but on conscience. Even worse, Suave's betrayal came wrapped in wholesome branding. This was the family-safe label, advertised with clean bathrooms, smiling couples, and taglines about care you can trust. Moms bought it for their sons, thinking it was gentle. Husbands used it before church on Sunday mornings. But benzene doesn't care about your intentions. It seeps into bone marrow, wrecks blood cells, and messes with testosterone and sperm production. Studies from the Centers for Disease Control have linked long-term benzene exposure to fertility issues, DNA mutations, and chronic hormone imbalance. The tragedy is that most men who used Suave had no idea they were participating in a slow-motion health experiment. For months after the contamination was known, the cans stayed on shelves, and Unilever's PR machine quietly massaged the story to avoid the words cancer and infertility. And as if poisoning consumers wasn't bad enough, Suave's so-called 24-hour protection formula came loaded with parabens, PEG derivatives, and aluminum chlorohydrate, a cocktail of chemicals banned or restricted in Europe for their links to endocrine disruption. It's almost comical. While European shelves swapped to clean, mineral-based deodorants, Americans were left with cans of industrial propellant dressed up in pastel packaging. Environmental watchdogs later discovered discarded Suave cans leaking into landfills, releasing benzene into the soil and groundwater, proving that the brand's contamination didn't stop at your skin, it extended straight into the planet. It's corporate irony at its finest. A clean brand leaving dirty footprints everywhere it goes. For many men, especially those in the working class, the betrayal feels personal. Suave wasn't a luxury, it was an act of trust. The truck drivers, warehouse workers, veterans, and retirees who used it daily did so because they believed in the safety of American store shelves. To find out that the good deal they counted on may have been slowly dismantling their reproductive health feels like the cruelest kind of insult. This wasn't just a recall, it was a reminder that when corporations start viewing safety standards as optional, the poorest consumers become the guinea pigs. If you still want to smell clean without dousing yourself in corporate indifference, leave the blue can behind. Safer alternatives exist. Each and every crystal mineral deodorant, Boulder Clean Men Spray, Type A, or Carpe deodorant all offer natural formulations powered by magnesium, arrowroot, or mineral salts instead of chemical propellants. They might not shout 24-hour protection, but they also won't deliver 24 hours of slow poisoning disguised as savings, because freshness shouldn't come with fine print, especially not the kind that rewrites your DNA. Number 5. Right Guard. Right Guard strutted into American bathrooms like the linebacker of masculinity, bold, tough, and ready to take on real sweat. Its commercials promised 48 hours of confidence, a locker room miracle in a can. But now that same can stands as a monument to corporate rot. The deodorant that swore to protect you couldn't even protect you from its own ingredients. Independent tests and court filings revealed what most loyal customers never saw coming. Multiple Right Guard sprays tainted with benzene, a cancer-causing petrochemical known to wreck bone marrow and quietly sabotage male fertility. The FDA allows zero tolerance for benzene in personal care products, yet some Right Guard batches clocked in above 5 parts per million. 5 times higher than the threshold of what toxicologists call acceptable risk. That's not a minor trace. That's like calling a forest fire a warm breeze. The lawsuits that followed read like a corporate crime novel. Former employees told investigators the defective aerosol tanks weren't replaced. They were vented outside to mask pressure buildup. Picture this: a chemical plant releasing toxic vapors into the Arizona desert while paperwork declares everything within standards. The deeper investigators dug, the uglier it got. Internal memos exposed how executives approved butane shipments known to contain trace benzene, calculating that recalls would cost more than settling lawsuits later. That's not quality control. That's gambling with people's hormones. No wonder workers reported headaches, dizziness, and reproductive problems long before consumers started asking questions. And yet, in the middle of all this, the brand kept airing commercials showing chiseled athletes doused in invisible clouds of freshness, as if confidence could mask corporate negligence. The irony cuts deep because Right Guard was supposed to be the dependable one. For generations, it was the deodorant of factory floors and high school gyms, an unspoken symbol of reliability for men who worked too hard to worry about labels. But the very men who trusted it were unknowingly inhaling endocrine disruptors. Beyond benzene, researchers found BHT and propylparaben lurking in some formulations, both linked to declining testosterone and reduced sperm motility. Harvard School of Public Health reported that consistent exposure to such compounds can suppress reproductive hormones in adult males, yet Hinkle continued to advertise maximum protection. That slogan hits differently when you learn it may have been protecting profits, not people. The environmental fallout made the betrayal even harder to swallow. Regulatory filings revealed that Hinkle's production waste, aerosol sludge mixed with benzene and toluene, was being dumped in unlined industrial landfills near residential areas. Groundwater tests later showed traces of those same chemicals seeping toward neighborhoods populated largely by factory workers and their families. The company brushed off concerns as exaggerated environmental claims. In other words, deny, deflect, and keep shipping. It's the same corporate playbook we've seen again and again. When the public finds out, act surprised. When regulators step in, settle quietly. When asked for comment, cite commitment to safety. But safety isn't a press release, it's a promise broken the moment a single contaminated can left the conveyor belt. For millions of men who grew up trusting that red and silver can, the realization feels personal. It's not just about deodorant, it's about betrayal dressed in branding. These are men who clocked double shifts, bought Right Guard in bulk, and passed it down to their sons because it was the safe choice, to discover that they were paying to inhale. Industrial fumes is more than an insult. It's a punchline to the cruel joke of modern consumerism, where loyalty is rewarded with toxins and accountability is outsourced to fine print. If you're done playing chemical roulette with your health, step away from the aerosol aisle. Switch to Art of Sport, routine natural deodorant, Perstaff Probayastor to Wortinäs Ionbertust, or Piper Y activated charcoal spray. Brands that replace fossil fuel propellants with zinc ricinoleate, arrowroot, and coconut-derived cleansers. They cost a few dollars more, but they don't come with a side of leukemia, because the only thing Right Guard has guarded lately is corporate liability, not the men who built its legacy. In the end, maybe the real stench isn't coming from our deodorants. It's coming from the corporations that made us trust poison wrapped in perfume. They sold us confidence, but what they really bottled was carelessness. Every can, every recall, every lawsuit is a reminder that the people on those glossy ads don't breathe what we breathe. They spray profits. We inhale consequences. And if they're willing to gamble with our health for a few cents of savings, what else are they hiding in the things we use every day? In our soap, our lotion, our food. The truth isn't just ugly, it's sprayed directly into our lungs. But you still have a choice. You can wake up, dig deeper, and refuse to be another quiet casualty of convenience. Because awareness is the one fragrance they can't bottle. And once you smell the truth, you'll never forget it. So don't just walk away from this video. Take a stand with us. Subscribe, stay alert, and let's keep exposing what's really hiding behind the labels.
Thank you for watching today's video all the way through. If you found the content helpful, don't forget to click like and subscribe to stay updated to our latest daily videos. Now feel free to check out other feature videos currently shown on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.